I help people publish all 5 ways. I have people who want to self-publish and electronically publish and even audiobook publish because it's a completely different market. But what's really fun for me, like I have a client currently who is a nonprofit, and he is writing a storybook that really reflects what the nonprofit is all about.
Welcome to Gratitude Geek, the relationship marketing podcast for micropreneurs building genuine, lasting relationships with clients, colleagues, and community. I'm your host, Nesbitt-Rodarte. If you love eavesdropping on conversations between grateful entrepreneurs who are making this world a better place, be sure to subscribe, share, and leave a review. Today, I'm joined by my friend who just happens to be the 2024 International Association of Top Professionals, motivational speaker, business consultant, and best-selling author of the year, Ms. Jennifer Wilkov. Jennifer is a seasoned author and book consultant. For nearly 2 decades, she has helped writers become bestsellers. She offers guidance to first-time and experienced writers, assisting with project development, platform building, and pitch refinement for books, television, film, or theater projects. Known as the literary agent matchmaker, her expertise in identifying marketable stories is valued by both literary industry insiders and Hollywood. We are going to celebrate some Jennifer today, but first,
Yay.
a word from our sponsor. Hey, Gratitude Geeks, Nesbitt-Rodarte here. I've been living with metastatic breast cancer since 2014, meaning I've been in cancer treatment for over 10 years. Some of the side effects that I feel because of treatment include inflammation, joint pain, stiffness, brain fog. I thought I had to live with these side effects. And then in 2023, I was introduced to the Super Patch Company, and my family and I have been wearing these medical devices ever since. These super groovy, drug-free, non-habit-forming, inexpensive patches can help with better sleep, less pain, less stress, and more focus. There are currently 11 different patches. Each has a specific purpose. I am super grateful about these super groovy super patches. Learn more about the Super Patch Company using my affiliate link, grateful.superpatch.com. That's grateful, grateful.superpatch.com. Welcome, my friend. Tell us what's going on. Catch us up. Last time we were here, we talked about your other business, which is
Speak Up Women.
Speak Up Women, which is an association for women who need to learn how to speak up and say what's on their mind, because we as women sometimes don't do that. But today it's more about we're not talking about that. We're talking about you. So catch us up with your life. What's been going on and where did this award come from? And I heard a rumor about something that may have happened in New York Times Square. So catch us up. What's going on?
Well, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate being with you, Candace, always. And for me, I found out in January that I was selected by the International Association of Top Professionals and selected for this award, which was very exciting, and we vetted it. And for me, it was really nice to be recognized, right? It's always nice to be nominated. I didn't know who nominated me. And the nice part about the award was I asked them, can you tell me? And they said, no, we usually don't reveal that. But they told me that what they were able to tell me was that an organization that I belonged to had nominated me, which was very nice. So then we vetted the president with people that just happened to come up in conversation when we mentioned it, and we're able to understand, who else was also part of this. I mean, this is like generals and people who are in very prominent positions, and I was like very humbled and very appreciative to be recognized. And then we got the news that I was going to be on the NASDAQ billboard in Times Square. And I said yes to doing that in March of 2024. And so that was quite an experience of actually seeing myself very, I don't know how many feet high it is, but having my portrait be on the Times Square billboard, that was very exciting.
So if you would like to see a photo of Jennifer on the NASDAQ billboard in Times Square, there will be a link to that in the show notes.
Yay.
Yay. So tell me about this top professionals. What do they do?
So they are top professionals throughout the nation who apparently get nominated for this award. And they do all kinds of things. Like one of the people, I was at one of the sort of get to know other members of it, uh, like online networking meeting. And one of the people who was there was a doctor. There was a coach there. There were other people that were in lots of disparate fields. They have entrepreneurs who have done like incredible things with their businesses. And for me, it was really nice to meet people. Like I had asked her, the president, about it. And she said, well, like, for example, one of our members is the doctor the entire nation turned to help solve the COVID crisis, and not Dr. Fauci, who everybody knew who was, talking about it, but this was really the research team that was trying to figure out how to solve it. And I was very impressed with that, as well as many other people. They're all in different walks of life.
In research, there's the team that's doing the work and then the team that presents the work.
Yes, there always is, isn't it?
It's like the late night
It's always
shows.
that way.
The late night shows. There is the host of the late night show, and then there's his entire team of writers, or her entire team of writers, doing all the work behind the scenes that without them, there would be no monologue.
That's right. That's right. I mean, that's the writer's room, right?
Okay,
One of
so
my faves.
oh yeah. I if you know any writers on those shows, I would love to interview one. Just saying. I'm just putting that out there because I know how well connected you are. So let's talk about the work that you do. You help authors become best-selling authors. What does that process look like?
I do. I work with people who are completely unknown, who want to be looked upon as leaders in their field, want to be at the top of their industry, want to write a best-selling novel, um, create a classic children's book or book series, create a book series that has merchandise attached to it, or maybe even a film. So I work with all different kinds of stories, and my stories for clients appear on the stage or the page or on the big or small screen. And I've been doing this for nearly 20 years. And I've been really blessed to work with lots of different people. I'm an editor, so I get to edit people's work. For me, Candace, it's really a fun thing because I get people who come to me in all different stages of their project. I have people who come to me with an idea and a concept and say, I know I want to write this book. I know I want to do it. And I just don't know how to get it from what's in my head onto the page. And so in that case, I help them outline or plot their particular book or story. And so once they have that, it's really empowering for them because then I let them know now you can go and you can fill in all the blanks. So you can learn a writing discipline where you write 20 minutes a day or an hour a day or 20, 20 pages in a week or something like that. And you give yourself a routine that you can maintain so you can be a writer. And that's really groundbreaking for a lot of people because then they actually know where the story's going. And there are different types of writers, and I work with both of them. They are plotters and pantsers.
Did you
And
say
pantsers,
plotters
plotters
and
and pantsers.
pantsers? Okay.
So plotters plot, right? They know exactly what's going to happen, when and where in the book and the story. And pantsers don't. pantsers write from the hip, and they let the
Mm.
characters tell them what's going to happen to them. And they have to pretty much type or scribble as fast as they can to capture it when they get the info.
I'm not a
And
writer.
so,
So this I'm not a writer, so this doesn't I'm speaking from anecdotes that other people I've heard from other people, but there it sounds to me like sometimes starting from the end and working backwards is one way that some writers get to the end. You know, they know what the end
yeah,
is going to be.
they know how it's going to start and they know how it's going to end, or
So is
they
that the
say, I want to
plotter?
write a book that's going to do this. Yeah, so usually that's a plotter
Okay.
who actually has an idea. Like, I've worked with a guy who was both. He was a plotter and a pantser, and crafting pitch letters, query letters with him was so fun because he said, "Oh, I can write this book in a week." And I was like, "Great. This is great." And I said, "Well, tell me the story." And so we actually went through the story that he had in his head. He said, "No, no, no, this character's not going to do that, actually. They're going to do this." Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, buckle up.
Wow.
But he knew the whole story by the time we were done. We were able to capture it and put it down on a page and pitch it, which was great. I also prepare people to pitch at live writers conferences so that they can pitch agents in person. In fact, I'm speaking this year at 7 events. And part of what I offer is a polish your pitch session, because preparing to pitch agents in person matters. And people always ask me, well, I'm going to wing it, or I'm going to, do the best I can and stuff. And I say, that's great. But did you know, Candace, secret, more than 60% of writers who have an agent first met them when they pitched live at a conference and followed up.
Really?
Yep,
60%. That's a huge number.
more than 60%.
So if you aren't doing that, your chances of getting an agent are pretty slim.
Well, usually what you end up doing is you're pitching on paper, is what I call it. So you're putting forward a query letter, and then you are waiting for a request from an agent, in most cases, a literary agent, who's going to ask you for more material so that they can consider whether they want to represent it. And so, like, I know an agency where you get, I think it's 3 to 5 lines for your entire project, and that's all you get to put in your letter.
So you better be
That's it.
really good at explaining in 3 to 5 lines.
So if you actually have a novel, for example, like I work with people, as as you mentioned, the literary agent matchmaker, because I help people identify the right agents to actually bring their material to in the first place. I also do that for producers in Hollywood, because not everybody wants to represent or produce the same type of story or the same type of project if it's nonfiction. What they want to be able to do is work with the material they love and do it over and over and over in different stories or different ways. And so for many people, I spoke to a gentleman who reached out to me and said, I really need to talk to you. I'm submitting to agents and I'm getting rejected. And I said, okay. So we talked a little bit. And in that little bit conversation, I learned that he had hired someone on Fiverr who had actually taken his query letter that he drafted and sent it to 500 agents. And I said, well, that's where your problems are starting, because you haven't actually personalized any of those letters. And you don't even know what those agents are looking for. And so just getting a list or getting a book or getting, something online that you read is not enough. You actually really need to understand who it is that you're submitting to. I mean, think about it. You wouldn't just marry anybody, would you?
No, not unless you're on a reality TV show and you're getting paid a lot of money to do it.
Boy, I got to tell you, I mean, I've
No, I
seen a
wouldn't do it.
lot in 20 years, and I help people publish all 5 ways. So I have people who want to self-publish and electronically publish and even audiobook publish because it's a completely different market. But what's really fun for me, like I have a client currently who is a nonprofit, and he is writing a storybook that really reflects what the nonprofit is all about. And that book, all the proceeds are going to the nonprofit, and all the donors are going to also purchase the book. So there's a built-in market, there's a whole, plus when it gets online and when we make it a bestseller, there's a whole like universe of people who are interested in this topic outside of just the people who know about the organization. So it's good for the organization, it's good for the story, it's good for him, and it's good for all those who are going to benefit from understanding and learning it.
And that's not the traditional reason why people write books,
No.
but
So,
it's its own
you know,
story. Yeah.
yeah, I
So
mean,
there is a lot to
there's so
unpack with.
many ways to do this.
Well,
Yeah.
you just said when we make it a bestseller.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is a strategy behind that, but I want to share before. Let's talk about that in a second. So, my friend Suzanne White, and I've interviewed her on the show, so I'll link to that in the show notes, audience. She blogged about her experience taking care of her elderly parents, and she blogged it on Twitter. She tweeted on a daily basis about taking care of herself while she was taking care of her parents, and she did it very consistently, and her writing was really, really good. And so she was contacted by a big name, big house publisher, and they turned her tweets into a book, right? That doesn't happen for it must happen one in a million times. Like that just doesn't happen for people. She just happened to be tweeting about a subject that the publisher was looking to write a book about, right?
Right.
um
And they're always looking,
but
oftentimes in bloggers too.
but how often does that happen? I mean, it's got to be rare.
It happens, once in a while because agents and publishers pay attention to where content comes from. And especially, we always say don't write for the trends, write what you love and know.
So she was
And
writing what she loved and knew.
right,
However, the publisher identified it as a trend.
right. And when the trend comes along, they're going to go out and look for what can we publish in this particular area so that we can get those eyeballs, those dollars, and those authors. And so they're often looking for, you know, um, in the past, um, publishers have looked on Twitter when it was Twitter. And the media was also on Twitter. Now there are other places where they are looking as well, other social media outlets where they can actually look for story and who's writing them, who's got a column, who's got a blog, who's got a podcast, who's got a whatever on that topic. And how
So
can I reach them? And did they publish a book? Are they interested in publishing a book? Or can I get them to write one?
since it's not Twitter anymore, for that one in a million possibility, where are they looking now? Do you know?
There are other social media platforms like Blue Sky, and there are some new ones that I just got wind of as well. I don't recall them at the present moment. But I've heard people who are on Threads that are looking on Threads. We basically, when we're publicists or we're publishers or we're literary agents, we're looking for people who have got good stories to tell that should be elevated, in our humble opinion, right? Our humble opinion. And so it's very selective. But someone may be able to say, you know what? I saw that, I could sell that. I think I'll reach out to them. And they do.
Sounds lucky to me, like luck of the draw. Like Suzanne was just blown away.
Yeah.
She wasn't looking to write a book. It just landed in her lap.
Well, I can
But
tell you about one of my clients who is she works with crystals and she sells crystals. And there was an imprint that found her, reached out to her, asked her to write a book in 5 months. She finished in 7, and then ended up telling her when her publication date was, barely gave her a publicity person. And for 7 months, she was looking for somebody to help her with marketing. And she found me about 2 months, a little over 2 months prior to when the book was going to be released. Now, this is a good story, so I'm going to finish it.
Okay.
Her book is the crystal book that has the most number of crystals covered in it right now. Because, of course, another one will come along and replace it, but not yet. And her book basically was something she was going to market. Guess where most of her audience was? They were on Facebook. Guess what happened to her 1 month into our work together?
Her Facebook blew up.
Facebook closed her account down with no
What?
warning.
Oh,
They basically shut her page down.
I have words.
And she called me. Oh, yes, she had none. She called me and said, I'm done. I'm finished. I'm not going to be able to do anything with this book. I said, no, no, no. I said, that's maybe your largest outlet. I said, but that's not your only one. And so I worked with her on her newsletter. This was at the end of the year. And I said, because her book was going to come out at the beginning of the year, I think it was January 6th. And I said, this is what you need to do. I said, you need to really pump up your newsletter to actually take over what you would have done on Facebook. So we did that. And then when we were in January, I gave her guidance about the bestseller campaign to do. She wanted to do it on her own. I said that was fine. I said I would monitor it and I would also look at what she was doing. She took everything I said and she implemented 95% of it. I wanted her to do it for 48 hours. She did it for 27, I think. The reason why she stopped is because she was already a bestseller in 3 categories. She was in the top 10 of all of them and the top 5 of the other.
Wow.
And in the crystal category, there are people who own the top spots. So you're not going to get to number 1 because they've been number 1 for like, more than a decade, if longer.
Yeah.
But she was number 3 in that category.
Wow. That's
And
phenomenal.
so, I said to her, if you had kept going, you probably would have gotten to number 2, maybe even displaced her temporarily, but you probably would have gotten higher in the tens that in the, little numbers that you were in the other categories, which is fine. She was happy, but it took me like 3 months to get her to call herself a best-selling author. People are funny.
I won an award. I won multiple awards for public speaking more than 10 years ago. And I still call myself an award-winning speaker.
Yeah. But you know what? The interesting part I explain to people all the time, because a lot of people like to work with me one-on-one, Candace. And the reason why they like that is because I'm very hands-on and all about their project. I'm not all about myself. I'm really all about their voice, their message, their story, and what they want to do with it, right? So here's a good children's book story. I had an author and an illustrator. I think she was a former Disney illustrator, who had come to me with a book with the following message. We wanted to be a Christmas classic, and they wanted to establish the Christmas classic book as the first in the series for the character. So I said, okay, let's see what we're going to do with this. So I worked with them. I helped them with the book. We got the book published. We also created a limited edition hardcover. And I also did a marketing strategic platform plan for what they wanted to do, what they told me, right, with the book. And so I guided them and directed them on events and awards and other things. And they are award-winning children's book authors.
Okay, so the audience is going to want to know what the crystal book is. They're going to want to know these books. Can you name drop?
Yes, I can give you the books. The crystal book, I'm gonna just make sure that I have it right. Hold on 1 second.
Because I know I'm going to get the messages. What's the name of the book?
So the crystal book is called Connecting with Crystals by Laurel Rethke,
Excellent.
Rethke, which I highly recommend. And the other book I mentioned, the children's book, which I highly recommend, is called Rasmus, the Christmas Moose. Rasmus, Rasmoose. Another one of my clients is a middle grade fantasy writer who has written a fabulous book that I've been editing. I helped her publish that book. She is an award-winning story monster, which is a big deal in that particular age group. Middle grade, we call the tweeners, 9 to 12. She's working on the second book. She has a merch line. And I also work with her on marketing. And we are getting ready to do her bestseller campaign. You know, one of the things about me that people don't realize about their books, I had another writer who came to me in the beginning of this year, actually. And she had a series that she was writing. It's historical Christian romance fiction, obviously. And she had never been a bestseller. She had actually created the audio book for some of her books, and she had a whole routine. And she even had, like, amassed sort of a marketing engine. She had never done that. And so she hired me, and she said, I want to be a bestseller. It was her 8th book.
Wow.
It was her 8th book. Okay, so I actually worked with her not only on that, but also on corralling all the marketing activities that she had also enrolled to support her with this book. And I said, no, no, no. I said, they have to do this on this day, and this person has to do this on that day. And, completely orchestrated like this incredible like composition. And so it was a 48-hour campaign. And we did Zoom, and on the first night and the second night is what we had scheduled, which we did both. But the first night was to engender people to, answer questions and talk about the book. And she brought on a couple of writer friends, which was great. She had already hit it, and she was already like up in above 15. In a very complicated category, which sounds very specific, but she was like right up there, which was fantastic. She was crying. Her parents were crying. Like, it was marvelous. It was, it was heartwarming for me because she had already made it. And so it turned that Zoom meeting that evening into a celebration. Instead of just, come on, ask me questions, buy the book, that kind of stuff. It totally transformed her experience, and she's lovely. And she's,
It
she's a
sounds to me
mom in Cleveland. Like,
it sounds to me like these Zooms are like book launches that would have happened in a bookstore, but now they're happening virtually so that you can have people from all over the place come to them.
Well, book launches are different than something like this, which was an event built around in conjunction with her marketing, which was part of her Amazon bestseller campaign and her particular campaign. which happened to be for Amazon.
So
So
this goes along with that, making it a bestseller. This is how the
yeah.
steps that you take to you make something. You don't just put something out there and expect it to be good.
Well, you don't wake up, you don't roll over the next day after you published your book, however it's published. I mean, the Crystal book, that Crystal book, I can tell you, is a book that was published. Let me see if I can tell you the name of the publisher, because they're the ones who came to her. And it's Castle Point Books. And Castle Point Books is an imprint. And I think that it's Hachette. Oh no, it's Macmillan.
But they came to her and
Macmillan Publishers came to her. Yeah, Castle Point is an imprint of Macmillan Publishing, the big Macmillan that does academic books and other kinds of things, right? The folks, the acquisition editor over at Castle Point saw what she was doing, was interested. They wanted a Crystal book. They found her. They asked her. She said yes. She signed the contract and she wrote it. And that's what happened.
but they
So it
just
does
they
happen.
paid her to write the book. That didn't include the marketing. That was on her.
That's right. Do you know why? Because most publishers these days don't provide any marketing. That is the number one myth that a lot of writers who I speak to say, oh, well, you know, the publisher will market the book. And I say, they don't do that. All they usually will do, like they did for her, is they'll put out a press release about the book under their business name, and then they will put the book on their website, and that's the end. And if you have a literary agent, it's not the literary agent's job to market either. The literary agent will put the book on their website because you're one of their clients and your name, but that's about it.
So there's two questions here. One is to talk about the team behind the books, and the other, but before we get to that question, let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages of an imprint or publisher publishing your book versus self-publication.
Well, you know, I have people who come to me with that question all the time. And I can tell you, Candace, it's an individual question. And I do an office hours appointment to discuss it with each individual writer, because they have to weigh and measure what they want. And for me as a consultant, my number one question is always, what do you want? What do you want this to be? What kind of experience do you want to have? And what are your expectations of it? Not of me, but of it. Like, what do you expect this experience to be for you? And how can we possibly make it that way? Because as a consultant, if all I'm doing is selling, then all I'm doing is saying, here, let me shove my services at you, which doesn't sound right. And what's more important to me is that if you have a great time writing and producing and marketing and walking out the door with your book, and you're so proud as a peacock with it, you're probably going to write another one. And that's what I want you to be. I want you to be able to have a great experience and say, I did that, right? And in whatever form that is, you know, whatever the book is, it doesn't, like, I'm not attached to that. I'm attached to, what do you want? You know, and yes, I can, you know, blow the barn doors off. I've worked with the chairman of the board of the largest real estate boutique law firm in Manhattan and helped him with his book, you know, helped him get it out there and do with it what he wanted to do. You know, I've also worked with, one of my clients is the Grammy Award winning co-producer of Fleetwood Mac. And he was blackballed by the publishing industry. And I single-handedly, after being asked by a mutual friend who's a Hollywood producer to come in and solve this problem for him, I met him and I single-handedly turned the entire ship around. And I also helped him as his national book marketing campaign manager for the first year of that book.
Wow.
You know, for me, I have clients who vary. I have someone who's an LCSW who was introduced to me by a mutual friend. He had a book and a manuscript and a dream. And he was an addiction counselor at somebody else's agency.
Mm.
And I said, "What do you want?" And he said, "I want my own practice. I want to carve out a brand new area of psychotherapy that doesn't exist." And I just was like, well, this is going to be big.
Yeah.
Do
Wow.
you know that he actually has his own practice today? He's married, has a son, and we did it. We carved out an area of psychotherapy that's specifically for diabetics. And his book, I helped him edit the book, create all the pitch documents, helped him pitch it. He got an agent. He got a 4-figure advance as an unpublished, never before published writer. And he also has more than 300,000 followers on Facebook. He's one of the top 5 speakers annually in his field. He speaks at an annual event for doctors, nurses, certified diabetic educators like he is, nutritionists, and more. And he created this therapy that is literally for not only the child, but for the child to navigate with the parents, plus adults who have diabetes. They all seek him out because he actually, in addition to dealing with trauma and other things that people may have, he's the one who knows. Do you know why? He was diagnosed at age 6 with diabetes type 1.
So he knew
And
from
I'll give you
personal
the name of
experience.
his book as well, because that was just, it was such a great book to work on. And it went through several iterations of how we're going to present this material. And
Well,
the book is called Parenting Children with Diabetes, A Guide to Understanding and Managing the Issues. And
that's a good
parents
title.
and,
It
oh
tells you
my God,
exactly what
it's
you're going to
so
get.
good. That's right. That's
But
exactly what it is.
that niche it's brilliant, because for children it's difficult too, but as an adult, if you're diagnosed with diabetes, you have to change everything. You
Everything.
change your
And everybody
lifestyle
around you.
has to
Yes.
change too. Yeah, because if one person in the household suddenly can't have sweets, holy moly, that means everybody in the household needs to cut back on
Everybody's got to
sweets.
change. I respect that, right?
Yeah.
Because, these days, a lot of people don't understand what it takes to create a book. But at the same time, they don't understand what the different facets of the process are.
Yeah.
And that's really part of what I do and why I'm a consultant. I've been asked to be a literary agent. I've been asked to work for agencies. I don't want to do that. I want to be on this side. And my classic question before we all take a sip of our drink in the bar is, well, who's going to help the writer then? Who's going to prepare them to actually get their projects to you in the way and shape and form you want them? And that's why I do what I do.
Yeah.
Because I help the writer. I'm on the writer's side of the table. I help the writer. The writer pays me. I'm a 4-fee consultant. I'm not a consultant who's going to take it on the back end. And I can tell you, Candace, how many people ask me that. And I say no, because then you're asking me to bet on you and what you're going to do after we finish. And I don't know if you're going to market it. I don't know if you're going to do the things that we laid out. I don't bank on that.
Yeah. Well,
I perform
when
what I do and I get paid.
and since you're paid by the writer,
Mhm.
you're not being influenced by the agency or the publisher.
I'm not.
Okay, so now
Nope.
let's talk about, because we've skirted all around it, but let's talk about the team.
Yeah, let's
Just
do
like
that.
a talk show host has a team.
That's right.
What kind of team does a writer need?
So I always say that writing is not a solo sport. It is a team sport. You need more than just your own eyeballs on your writing, on your manuscript, on your story that you're telling, on your how-to book, on your self-help book, on your memoir. You need somebody else to come in and look at it, and somebody who understands publishing and understands what works and what doesn't for the reader, regardless of which way you're going to publish. It's really important that people have an editor. I mean, I'm an editor with the Editorial Freelancers Association, and I'm sought after because I'm a developmental editor and a line editor, and I do copy editing. But most people want me for line editing, which is a fusion of continuity and flow with the copy editing. And you need another pair of eyes. You just need somebody. I also do assessments. I assess people's book proposals, manuscripts. I also assess people's query letters. People get rejected. They come to me and they say, I can't understand why I'm getting rejected. I did everything in that class I took, or, or that book I read or whatever. And I'm like, well, maybe you did, but you're not presenting your story correctly. Like, I was on the phone just this morning with someone, and she's taking countless classes. And she's like, well, I didn't win this contest. And, I and I said to her, you're not presenting your story right. The more I learned about the story, the more I was like, well, it sounds more like this. And here's something that's really important for people to know, Candace. In publishing, we believe that every story has already been told. In some way, shape, or form, every story already exists. It's your job to prove to us why your story is like something that's already sold, and why it's different and belongs on the shelf next to it.
So it's
And
like
if you
something,
can't
but
do that,
you've got to have a type of story, and but it has to differentiate itself enough that it's worth reading as well as the originals, the story that it's
yeah,
like.
I mean, I tell people all the time, go to the bookstore, whether it's I happen to like to go to the physical bookstore personally. But go to the bookstore, go to the bookstore online. Where does your book belong? That's always where I like to talk to clients from, is that place of where are we going? Like, where are we supposed to end up? Where's the shelf? What's next to it? Why? Why is this book like those other books?
And why would somebody who read this also need to read this?
Yeah.
So we're going to shift gears to movies for a second. I'm
Yeah.
famous for my tangents. I was watching this movie. It was in Farsi. I think it was in
Okay.
Farsi. And the movie is called Hero. I had to read the subtitles, but I actually really didn't need to read the subtitles because you could tell what the movie was about just by watching the movie.
Good movie then.
I was really engaged in this movie because it
Yeah.
was the Merchant of Venice
Love it.
that took place. Was it Merchant of Venice? Is Merchant of Venice the one with the pound of flesh? I want my pound of flesh. Yeah, that's the
I
Merchant of
think it
Venice.
is. Yes.
Okay, it was the Merchant of Venice, but it took place in a prison in Iran.
Okay.
But it was the story was the Merchant of Venice.
You
And it
could
was like,
recognize it, right?
but it was so engaging, and it was telling a story that I was familiar with
Right.
in a way that I had never seen, in a language I don't speak, but the
But you
storytelling
didn't
was
need to.
the storytelling was fantastic, right? That's exactly what you just said. Every story has already been told. You just have to tell it in a different way that's engaging.
Yeah, yeah, and you have to be able to present your story, right? And what is similar about your story, but what's totally different about your story. Like, nobody wants a repeat. Agents don't want to represent the same type of book. That's exactly carbon copy of something they're already representing. That's a conflict of interest with their client, and it doesn't feel comfortable for them,
Yeah.
you know.
But every
There
story
are
has the same characters. They have the hero, they have the guide, they have the villain, the antagonist, the protagonist. I mean, they're all the love interest. You can basically outline the characters of a story for all the famous stories, right?
Yeah, I mean, you should be able to identify anyway, the protagonist, the antagonist, what the antagonist wants, and what's at stake. In other words, why do you care? What is it that you actually care about? Otherwise, you wouldn't watch it, you wouldn't read it, and you wouldn't buy a ticket.
Yeah. Even Beowulf. Beowulf. The protagonist is Beowulf. The antagonist is Grendel, and the guide is the woman that he meets. The woman whose name I don't
Mhm.
remember. Right there.
Yeah, I mean, there are take any story. I run a writer's room and I curate it. And I curate the writing experience, and I have people who have elevated their projects and completed them because it provides accountability, structure, mindfulness, and insight to help you really get underneath your story and pick it up so that you really engage and immerse someone in the story that you're telling. Or whether it's a one woman stage or one person stage production, or it's a memoir or historical fiction or thriller or whatever it is, right? There are lots of things that you need to take into consideration. And in that writer's room, every week, 1 week at a time, Thursday nights, I curate the Make It Happen room because that's where people make it happen. They actually come in, they finish their projects. I have an award-winning screenwriter who's completed projects in there. I've also got someone who is a director. She also teaches directing, who's also written screenplays in my room. So she can get them done. It gives people scheduling. It gives people time to say to the
Accountability.
people around them, not right now, I'm writing, this is my time to get this done. And it gives them something that keeps them going from week to week and continuing their writing process. So they finish.
So if you're a writer and you want more information about that Thursday night event, it'll be in the show notes. It's episode 222.
Yay, I like
GratitudeGeek.com,
that.
episode 222. It's a good number, 222. Okay, so let's just gab for a second because you and I are friends. I was at a networking event, a virtual networking event. I only do virtual networking events. A couple of weeks ago, and it was for podcasters, but every single person I met that day was a writer who was at some stage writing a book.
Wow.
And every
Awesome.
single one of them was asked, would you like to meet my friend Jennifer? She's a book consultant. And single one of them said yes. And I said, here's my information. Send me a message and I will connect you. Did any of them reach out to me? One person. One person. So that's on my list of things to do this week, is connect you with that one person who actually. But
Thank you.
I also will tell you about the event. Since everybody I met was a writer, you probably need to be at that event. It's once a month.
Super.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to learn about it. One of the things I've found is that when people are introduced to me, it makes it real.
Mm. Oh, and
And
that can be a
for
little
some
scary.
people, they get stage fright. Because
And
it
I'm
really, instead of being able to sort of talk idealistically about, oh, I'm writing my book or I'm this and that and whatever. Um, when you actually like when you're like talking to somebody who wants to work with people who buckle down, it makes you face, it's sort of like a confrontation, makes you face what you said you wanted to do. And it's a check-in, and you know what? It's fine.
yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Well,
when they get to it, they will.
it's you got to get over the butterflies because it can be scary. And a
Yep.
lot of people don't realize just how long stuff takes. I mean, this
No,
is
they
an
don't.
hour-long podcast, but it takes about an hour of prep work, 8 hours of, post prep, the editing and all this stuff. And then I'm on this mission right now to increase my YouTube channel viewership. So I am cutting every single episode into shorts, which takes another 8 hours. So every single podcast that I do is that 18 hours? 18 hours goes into each podcast episode, right? And I do all of that myself because I want to. I want to. This is my baby. I don't want to hire somebody else to do the stuff that I want to do because I want control over it. But a lot of people, it's for the writer. For Hemingway spent however many hours a day writing one page, right?
That's right. That's right.
To get one page, the amount of work that goes into it, but it doesn't stop when the book is written.
Yeah, it doesn't stop. It never does. And for a lot of people, they don't realize that. And they have this idea that they're going to pass the project over to somebody and that person is actually going to move it for them.
Yeah.
And the problem for many people, except for people And I love working with people with pseudonyms because for most people, they are the face of the book. They're the person who's going to go out and speak about it. They're the person who's going to do the podcast interview for it. They're the person who's going to be interviewed on the blog for it, and so on. When you have a pseudonym, the whole purpose is so that people don't know who you are.
So how
And
do
you
you
can still
market
be a
that? Yeah.
bestseller as a pseudonym.
But
But
you
a lot
can't
of
do the
people don't
podcast
know how to
circuit.
do that, right?
Yeah. Well, I guess
Right.
you could do the podcast circuit, which is audio only,
Well, it
as long as
depends on when you want people to know who you are and if you ever do. And people have different reasons for wanting to have a pseudonym. You know, it might be their profession. They don't want people to know. You know, they may be in, you know, a white collar profession and they want to write erotica. You know, they don't want people to know, right?
yeah, yeah.
And so there are all kinds of things that go on. But at the same time, for many people, they don't realize that at the end of the day, writing the book is only 10% of what you have to do. 90% is actually all the other stuff that you need to do. And that's why you need a team. To get back to your team question, you really want someone who's going to look at it, who's going to help you get it to publication. That might be a team, additional members of an agent and a publisher, or someone who's going to help you shepherd the book, as we like to call it, like I am, who help you get all your files designed and uploaded and distributed out to thousands of points of sale. Those are very important. If you have an audiobook, you need an audio production team like we have at Your Book is Your Hook, you know. You need a team that's going to actually do all of that recording and editing and producing and distribution beyond Audible. Those pieces are really very important. And the other people are your marketing people, your publicity person, people who might help you with social media, people who might help you create other things that you might do with your content. Wash, rinse, repeat content is outstanding. And it allows us the opportunity to really leverage what you set out to do in the first place. Now, if you have a nonfiction book and nonfiction material, what ends up happening is you've got a lot of content that you might create a workshop, a course, a retreat, a something, right, for people to do and do more of, because this is what happens, Candace, right? Somebody reads the book and they get to the end and they're like, this was great. What else does this person have to offer? And I explain this to people all the time. I was explaining this to somebody this morning who's writing a first-time nonfiction book. And I said, where are they going to find you? What are you going to do? What are you going to offer? Like, if I
Yeah.
read the
What's
book
next?
and you don't send me somewhere, that's on you as the writer. That's you. But that's all the stuff that I do with my clients because I want them to want to write another book and enjoy the process and not feel like it's a burden and bring to bear what they set out to do. It should be a joyful experience for them. The people who use or read or enjoy what they do should have that opportunity to get something good. I always say, listen, if you're going to write a book, write a good one because you're asking somebody to invest 8 to 10 hours to read it.
Mhm.
So it
Or
better be
longer if it's a
good,
longer book.
right?
Yeah.
If it's a longer book. And for that, it goes for films if they're going to watch it, TV shows if they're going to binge watch it, and so on. You know, one of the things that most people forget about in writing is that quality matters. It really does. It's how you actually get people to stick to you
Mhm. And
because
if you
they
have to go
really
back and
look,
reread a paragraph because it didn't make any sense, are you
it's a
really
problem.
are you gonna keep going? Because I don't understand what just happened.
Yeah, I used to know a publisher who was out west. I don't think he's in business anymore, but years and years ago, because I've been doing this so long, he and I had this great conversation, and he said, you know, he said, if I can't get through the first 20 pages of a book because of punctuation, spelling, or just silly stuff, he said, I'm not reading the book, and I'm certainly not going to publish it. So it matters. Like we had clients, I had a client who they are 60 plus year old professional organizers.
Oh, wow.
They're fantastic. They have a fantastic book called Filled Up and Overflowing, which I highly recommend. And their book is about, I call them the anti-organizers. They're the people who work with all kinds of people, but one of their people categories are hoarders. So if all they do is organize your sock drawer in 1 hour, that's good. But they don't like labels, and they're really wonderful women. And they opted originally to have family and friends edit their book. And then then they asked, came back to me. I helped them organize the book up front, like I was telling you earlier on in this interview. And then they wanted to utilize this other group of people. So we said, fine. They brought the book to us. Candace, I caught 400 edits that needed to be made. And I said to them, we can't publish this book. You can't publish this book. You're professional organizers. People are going to actually make judgments on the fact that they can't read the book.
Yeah.
And it doesn't reflect well on you. So that's also what we do. We do quality control when we actually are assisting people with publishing, because they have to publish a good book. Oh, by the way, that's a bestseller also. And they also have a deck of cards, 10 organize your home 10 minutes at a time.
What a
Only
great
deck of
idea.
cards. Only I challenged them to make it, that product.
That is
So
a
they have
great
a deck of
idea.
cards.
So
Yeah,
sort of
only
like
deck.
like a yoga deck where you pull out three poses.
That's it.
I love
One
what a
one card is 10 minutes. Takes you 10 minutes to do it. It's
and if you
every
just do
area of your
one
house
card
and
a
your car.
day, what a brilliant idea. You know what? That will be in the show notes, y'all. There's going to be a lot in the show notes today. We are, I hate that we have to wrap up because I have so many more things to talk about. But you know what? Do you have time? Can we keep going?
Yeah, I have a couple minutes. Yeah, I can keep going.
I just want to make a snarky comment. I don't normally talk about politics, but the importance of an editor has been made very evident lately by a certain governor of a certain state releasing a book recently that had
Oh,
a part of
yes.
it that probably shouldn't have been included in the book. And that's what
Yes.
somebody like Jennifer would take care of.
Well, what's very interesting about that particular situation is that when someone puts something in their book, right? So I'm currently editing another book, and so I'm editing 2 books right now. Okay. One is a thriller that has authorities in it. We'll just leave it at that. And they swear. Okay. They curse. They use curse words, all of them. You pick the letter, they say it.
Yeah.
Okay. In this other book, a Christian family is raising a child and don't usually use those terms. And we were editing the book the other day, and she had put in something that said holy S. Okay. Shh.
Yeah.
Right. It.
Mhm.
And so I said to her, I don't think the child would hear that in that home. And so I don't believe that the child would actually say that. And so I explained this to her. So we changed it. Right. And it's that dialogue with an editor. And then you have people who may have been this particular author who say, I don't want to change that. And then it's up to the publishing company to make that decision to keep it in. But most publishing companies, when you have an editor, they will cut it out.
Yeah.
And so if they published it for a reason. They published it for the publicity. They published it for whatever reason. Obviously, she knew about it, which she should know about it. But that conversation should have happened. And, for all intents and purposes, you would assume that it did, because she's out stomping about it.
Yeah. Well, I think she's actually quit her book tour. She's
I hope so.
I think she
In
stopped her book.
in my own humble opinion, I hope so. I happen to be an animal lover, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
This has been great.
It is. I love talking to you. It's always a pleasure when we get a chance to have a one-on-one conversation. So this is
Let's do it again.
yes, we will. So in terms of book marketing, what is your favorite marketing tool, tip, or technique?
Well, it depends on the person because sometimes speaking is a great vehicle for people, but other times it's not the right vehicle for people. And when you actually have someone who is going to market, like the children's book, right? So there are different things that they need to do versus somebody else that could actually be on a stage. They're never going to be on a stage because a children's book author doesn't usually appear on a stage, with thousands of people or at an annual sales meeting, as an example, right? And so I call it the web of marketing. You need to understand which ones you're going to do. And I have a checklist for people and I say, hey, do you want to do this? No. Do you want to do yes? And then I'll tell them this usually works in this type of project that you have, but this is what you're going to do for it. I don't want to do that much. Okay. Then you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't even start.
The answer is it really depends.
Yeah, it really
The answer to
depends.
most of my questions of you today was it depends.
You know why?
Because it
And I have
does.
to wrap up with this, unfortunately, but I'd love to come back. What's really important for people to know is that your book is all about you until it's about the reader. And when it's about the reader, which it should be from the minute that you dedicate that book, you should write to the reader. You should make it consumable by the reader. You should market to the reader. You should write it in their language and their terms and at their reading level so that they can really enjoy it and get it. Because I promise you, when they do, they'll come back for more.
All right, Jennifer Wilkov, this is your moment of gratitude. For whom or what are you most grateful?
Oh, I'm grateful for my life, honestly. After surviving lots of things in my world, but most recently an advanced stage 4 non-small cell lung cancer terminal diagnosis that I beat. That was followed by a surprise bowel resection during my recovery. I'm very happy to be here.
Thanks for tuning in to Gratitude Geek, the relationship marketing podcast for micropreneurs building genuine, lasting relationships with clients, colleagues, and community. Our theme music is track 14 by Rev Brock and Soul Lily. To connect with our guest, Jennifer S. Wilkov, head over to the show notes at gratitudegeek.com. This is episode 222. I've been your host, Candice Rodarte. Stay groovy, my friends.
Stay groovy, my friends.